Hello, and how are you on this fresh and frosty January morning? I'm feeling quite warm after walking all the way up that hill. Let me begin today's story with an experiment, a poem split into two halves with a marked change between them. And see if you can spot the difference. There's something rich and joyful to the mind to view through close and field those crooked shreds of footpaths that most picturesquely wind from town to town, or some tree-hidden sheds where lonely cottager life's peace enjoys, far, far from strife and all its troubled noise. John Clare's words are beautiful in themselves, but how about part two? The pent-up artisan, by pleasure led along their winding ways, right glad employs his Sabbath leisure in the freshening air, the grass, the trees, the sunny sloping sky. From his week's prison gives delicious fare, but still he passes almost vacant by the many charms that Posey finds to please along the little footpaths such as these. So what was the difference? Well, the difference was, of course, music. Music which has the power to bring both words and scenery to life, whether it's the music of the birds or of the church organ. Today's journey takes us to one of the most striking churches of the Salisbury Diocese, St Mary's in Alderbury. It's been a beacon of my countryside walks for years, standing high on a hilltop, the spire visible over miles of pasture land. But I've never actually explored the church until today. St Mary's was built in 1857, the same year that Edward Elgar was born and Anthony Trollope published his famous novel Barchester Towers, but it replaced a much older, plainer structure with a wooden bell turret. Almost no trace of that earlier building remains, but the yew tree here on the left of the church path is said to be 1,500 years old. Inside, all is peace, calm, and shelter from the wind. But as the early afternoon sun begins its steady descent, I'm more keen than ever to start playing. This is a much bigger organ than what I'm used to playing on this channel actually, and it's in the darkest, gloomiest corner of the church. So it looks very imposing and quite spooky here, I'd say. This is an organ built in 1889 by the same builder as the instrument at Lover Church, William Sweetland of Bath. So it's stood here for more than 100 years and it's amazing to still be able to play it. Before I show you the console, around the side of the instrument you actually have a cross-section of the various departments of the organ, which is fantastic. These wooden pipes with the stoppers are the low bass sounds. In front of them are the pipes of the grate, the loudest and lowest keyboard. And then most interestingly, at the very back you can see the high swell box. And we've talked about how an organ can achieve a crescendo and a diminuendo, in other words getting louder and then getting softer by those shutters opening and closing. Inside those shutters are all of the pipes. Let me show you. So here at the organ console we can see the two keyboards and a straight pedal board. Slightly harder to play than a concave pedal board. And to the right is the swell pedal, and that's what opens and closes those shutters. And on an organ this large, that effect of the shutters is quite a big difference. So say if we pull out full organ, open diapason, principal, and on this organ an oboe, and play a sturdy C minor chord. Close the box and you can hear how much softer it is. So if you're playing a piece like Boelmann's Toccata, you can achieve quite a big variation in volume, and you can choose exactly how loud you want that top keyboard to be. Oh, my fingers are too cold. I can't play that. Look, my fingers are actually too cold to be able to play it. That's a good start. That's Boelmann's Toccata. If you're wondering how it should sound, here's one I made earlier. We have the usual arrangement of the great stops on the right, open diapason, and then add a principal for brightness, and finally a 15th. And some quieter stops, the clarabella and the harmonic flute. The best way to use those is in combination with the swell. So you'd have the swell as an accompaniment and the great as the tune, and you'd probably close the box and have this kind of effect. This short demonstration highlights some of the key differences between a church organ and a piano. I've never had a piano lesson, so I'm quite at home with the multiple keyboards, stops, and the pedal board. But if you look at both instruments together, you can really begin to understand the differences. Here I am, friends, at the keyboard of a fairly conventional upright piano. Unusual for me. This shows you the key differences between organs and pianos. In particular, look how many more keys this instrument has than a pipe organ. With organs, the variety is created by having more keyboards, whereas with a piano, everything is done on one keyboard, so you can be really high and twinkly, or really low and powerful, all with your fingertips. With the organ, the bass line is played with your feet, and the hands work in slightly different ways, and technique is completely different. First of all, watch what happens when I play a note on the piano. After a few seconds, it begins to die away, whereas on a church organ, that note will continue to pipe away for as long as you're holding down the key. Secondly, an organ has a full keyboard played with your feet, whereas all this piano has is two pedals, one of which makes it slightly softer, and the other one is a sustain pedal. So if I play a note with the sustain pedal down, you can release that note and it continues to play. Of course, that doesn't work with the organ. If we take this piece by J.S. Bach, Prelude in G minor, which is written for the church organ, you can also see how much more variety can be achieved on the organ because of the different technique. Take this passage, for instance. It sounds rather bland played on the piano. Enlivened by the ticking clock. Even so, it's still slightly bland on the piano, whereas on an organ you would have echoes by playing the second part of each phrase up on the higher keyboard, which is set to be slightly quieter. Let's demonstrate that with Bach's Prelude in G minor. all the glories of the Baroque era with Bach's Prelude in G minor. So that piece was written on 3 different staves, 2 for the hands and 1 for the feet. So you can see which body part has to navigate which musical line. But how about hymns on the church organ? What do? There are only 2 staves. Well, take for example a hymn which you deserved to hear in full in the last video, but which didn't quite work out. Yes, Abide With Me. If you play it on the piano, everything is played with the hands. Whereas on the church organ, you play the top 3 parts with your hands and the bass line is played with the feet. So let's put that to the test at St Mary's Church in Alderbury. This is an interesting performance. We got by just fine, and then something happened which completely changed the video from here on in. Not to be too cliched. So it starts with C minor, and then goes to C minor in first inversion, and then it's got to go to A flat, and then E flat, and then where next? No, it needs to go somewhere else. So often on this channel, misfortune turns to opportunity, and that was certainly the case here. What we had was a sticking note. It wasn't a big problem, but I had to fumble with various keys on the pedals and the keyboards to try and loosen that note, to free it up again so that we could use the organ again. Eventually I did manage to free up that note, but in the process I started writing a piece of music which was actually created out of trying to solve that problem, as you heard, and it had these 4 chords. I listened back to those recordings I'd made at St. Mary's, and I went back home and I started to write this piece based on those little drafts or improvisations. My plan was to go back to St. Mary's Church and record the finished piece. But first of all, let me show you the various parts of this piece on the piano. And because it's written for an organ, in other words, with pedals, I've had to enlist Billy just off camera to play the bass line. So that's the first draft of this unnamed piece composed at St. Mary's Church, Alderbury, and now it's time to go back to the church to record it in full. But as so often happens on this channel, things didn't quite go as I had expected. Hi friends, I'm now trying to get back to the church, but this seems to be the one day in perhaps 10 years when the road is being resurfaced with the church right at the centre, so I can't park outside anymore. So I'm walking to do a reconnaissance to find out whether I can actually get into the church. And after that, I'll have to go back to my car and get my cameras and carry the whole lot of them across this field back to St. Mary's. Let's find out. In all the snow and ice, the footpaths which I so loved walking had deserted me, and I struggled to find my way across. I'm struggling here. Making progress. Also, I can bring a slimmed down version of my equipment, just one camera and a tripod and the microphone. So let's just see if the church is open. this time it was not to be. I believe that everything in life happens for a reason. And with that in mind, I've already booked out a much bigger church organ to give the maiden performance of that new piece. We'll also be making our first adventure into the county of Devon for next Sunday's video, because there is a village church there which I cannot wait to show you. Whether completely successful or not, I will always try my best for you in making these videos. And I hope that you are moved by the music, but even more so, I hope you're moved by the scenery, and perhaps you learn something too. If you look forward to these videos on a Sunday evening, and perhaps if they're of some comfort to you as well, you might like to consider helping to support me. If you'd like to do that, you can use my PayPal link underneath this video. If you take a look underneath, you'll see a link there, and click on that and it takes you to the Salisbury Organist donations page, and from there you can make a small donation if you're enjoying my films each Sunday evening. I would be truly grateful and appreciative, and more so, it really helps keep me on the road and filming and making my journeys and my adventures more ambitious. Thank you so much. In the meantime, I'd like to end this video right back where it began, with poetry and with music. Oh, for the unshackled mood as free as air, and pleasure wild as birds upon the wing. The unwronged impulse won from seasons fair, like birds' perennial travels with the spring. Come, peace and joy, the unworn path to trace, crossing ling heaths and hazel-crowded glen, where health salutes me with its ruddy face, and joy breathes freely from the strife of men. Oh, lead me anywhere but in the crowd. On some lone island would I rather be, than in the world, worn knowledge noising loud, wealth gathering up and losing. Leave with me calm joy and humble hope from quiet one, to live in peace, unhurt, and hurting none. Thank you, as always, for watching.